You finally noticed that you can actually use Ionic with React? Well, in this video, I'm gonna tell you how to take the first steps with Ionic React and build your application for the web, iOS and Android. Hey everyone, what's up? Simon back here with a beginner guide for Ionic React that covers everything that you need to understand. So in this tutorial, I want to take the first steps with Ionic React and show you how you can build an application with a bunch of Ionic UI components like items, a select, how you add navigation to your project, how everything works with Ionic in terms of styling and the icons, and of course also how to make cool API calls and load some data and display it in your application, and finally how to build that application from one single code base for the web, for iOS and for Android, even with live reload on real devices. So stick with me if you want to learn the basics of Ionic React. This tutorial will be available on galaxies.dev once we're launched. Check out the link below the video. I'm gonna update it, but upfront you can already sign up and get on the rocket to explore new galaxies with me. But for today, just make sure you hit the like and subscribe button for the video, and then we dive into the first Ionic React application with API calls and navigation. Alright, so let's get started with Ionic. If you've never used it, make sure you install the CLI by running npm install globally at Ionic CLI, and of course make sure you have Node and npm set up, but if you're coming from a React background, I'm pretty sure you already got that. Once you got the Ionic CLI installed, you can run a bunch of commands with it. So you can run Ionic start to start a new application, followed by the name. I'm just going to call this movie app, followed by a template. I recommend you select blank for now, and the type of the JS framework, which is React in our case. But you could also use Angular, you could use Vue, or you could also use vanilla JavaScript. Now, this will install a bunch of packages in our application, and depending on where you live, this can take from like 30 seconds to 30 minutes, probably. We all know how big this can get. Let me already open this because we usually already got most of the important stuff quite immediately. So here we go with our editor. If the question comes up, I'm currently using 50 Shades of Purple as my Visual Studio Code theme. Where does this window end? I think it's here, right? Okay, in our new application, we can, when the packages are done, right, update your CLI. Yeah, that's not important. Was there any other log that could be interesting? Yeah, you should cd into your application and then run Ionic serve. That is the most important part. Let's do this to get a really quick win. An Ionic serve brings up the web preview of your Ionic React application. And there we go. Here is our Ionic application. It looks like a website because it is basically a website with Ionic UI components. So if you dive into the UI components linked here in your app, you're gonna find a bunch of Ionic components. And this is pretty much what makes up Ionic UI or Ionic framework. There are other things like Capacitor, Capacitor, stencil, and such things. However, at the core, Ionic is pretty much UI components. Not just like plain UI components, but also things like an alert, an action sheet, a badge, whatever. You can look through this. It's helping you with the navigation and transitions between the pages. So this is what essentially Ionic is made up of. Now, if you take a look at your project, you're gonna find it's pretty much a basic React project. We got a package JSON, we got a tsconfig, so by default Ionic is using TypeScript. We have two configuration files. The one for Ionic is actually not really important anymore, only if you're using cloud services, but you don't have to worry about this at this point. And the Capacitor config is a configuration file for your native project, so the native iOS and Android project. We will get to that in the end. For now, the most important thing to consider is the source folder. And here we're gonna find a few components. We're gonna find pages. So every view inside your Ionic application is basically a page. The construct that you also have like in mobile applications. Everything is pretty much a page. Then we got theme with a few CSS variables, which are used automatically by Ionic. You can also, of course, define your own stuff in here. You can define more variables or just change them. And then we have the entry point inside the index TSX. So this is just the default React setup. and in the app.tsx we have some imports for all the Ionic styling. Again, most of this Ionic, what Ionic offers is really UI stuff. And then we set up Ionic React. This is really the most important call. And then we wrap everything inside an Ion app, which gives us like can we dive into this? Some additional things that we can configure globally for the application. And then we have the React router, which is pretty much sitting on top of the default React router. Only that Ionic will do a few things, especially in terms of transitions, like pushing a page forward or going backward, those kind of things. And by default, we only have one route defined to the home path and a redirect to home, and this will display our home component. So let's go into the home component and let's maybe do this side by side. I'm gonna make this a bit smaller, but well, during debugging, I usually change the size of the window every now and then. However, what I also recommend is the developer tools. So on the Mac, you can put in Command Option I. I think on Windows, it's something like Control Shift I, and that should bring up the developer tools. This will only show the console for now, but if you click on this little device up here, you can also select preview devices, and now things become interesting because now you can switch platforms. So let's say I'm on an iPhone and I'm going to refresh this, and we're going to see a change in here because Ionic has adaptive styling, and this page here, this home page, consists of a general Ion page. Then we got a header area, and then we got, well, this is kind of confusing a bit for iOS. Let's simplify this. Let's do this like this. We just want to have a general default header, Ion toolbar, Ion title blank. Yeah, this is how the default setup for iOS would look like. Now, if I change my device to, let's say, a Galaxy Fold and hit refresh, we're gonna see that we now have Android styling. And this is the cool thing about Ionic. We got adaptive styling of Ionic components. So for stuff like the header, the toolbar, everything, every Ionic UI component, you will automatically get the according either material design or iOS design styling. So let's go back to an iPhone. It was a bit bigger, and we can even see this if we take a look at this and inspect it right here at the HTML tag. We got mode equals iOS. Now, if you just check it out as a website, by default, Ionic will use material design, but you can also change that if you want to. So let's say I now go to the Pixel 5 and refresh. We're gonna see that we now have the mode MD set in here. And in fact, I don't even need the device preview. So by default, again, URL using material design, but I can put in, what is this? Ionic mode equals iOS. Yeah, and then we see the iOS view. So this is how Ionic does the adaptive styling. And of course, if you run the app later on a real device, you're gonna get on iOS the iOS representation, on Android the Android representation. However, I could always change this. So I could also say mode equals iOS on our Ion header, which means even if I now go to the material styling, I would still have the header. So it is not like Ionic does this some kind of magic in the background. You can change how this works depending on your use case. So you could change it through the URL. If you do the preview, you can fix the mode. You say, okay, the button looks actually cooler on iOS. I always want to use iOS buttons. You could also do this globally, and there are like enough ways to customize your application with Ionic. So don't feel trapped. It has become a bit more challenging. So if you've used Ionic before, it was a bit easier. Now every Ionic component is using the shadow DOM, and it's not that easy to inject styling anymore. So let's say you want to style, and I don't know, let's use the button. It's a good thing. If you want to customize the button and the colors, what you need to do is you actually need to get into the oh, that looks interesting. You need to get into the CSS variables that are defined for a button. So everything with dash dash is a CSS variable that Ionic defined on the button, and you can then override them, and that is how you inject styling. So you sometimes can't directly style something because it is behind the shadow DOM, and therefore you can't the CSS is scoped and you can't affect it from outside. This is good and this is bad, but anyway, nothing we need to dive into more right now. For now, let's see how we can actually build out our application. So we got the home page. The default setup is a page with a header and a content area. I can also remove this Explore container. I don't really want that. I also don't want the home CSS. So then we have a blank page and hello world, just to complete the beginner tutorial. Okay. We now want to build an application with actually quite some interesting features. A search bar, a little drop down, select, a list, navigation, and API calls to the Open Movie database. So grab an API key. You can request an API key by putting in your email. You can either support them or use the free one with a daily limit. Just put in like Simon's tutorial and you should probably, or you should get immediately that key. Now, to use that API, let's create a new folder. I'm going to call this hooks and create a new file, use api.tsx. And within, I'm actually going to like bring in the full code for this because this is just plain React and nothing really we need to figure out from Ionic. So I added a little search type enum and an interface for some results using the properties of the API. And then within the use API custom hook, I define the URL to the API and the API key. So let me copy my current key. I'm rotating those keys all the time. And then we have one function to search by a title and a type. So we could specify like search for series and title, Lord of the Rings or whatever, or game. And then we'll make a simple fetch request to the URL using the search string, our title, URI encoded, and the type, and our API key. And the same if we want to get the details for something. In that case, we make a call to the ID of this whatever, and you can include plot full and the API key and just return the JSON. And then our hook returns those two functions. It's really just a plain, really simple implementation. There's just this one API endpoint here that we want to use, and you can check out the different parameters that you can send, like the ID, the title, the type, year of release, plot, type. You can actually get XML. That's cool. Or you can even have a JSON call. Oh, this is crazy. It's a crazy API. Anyway, so this is our hook. And now let's build our view around this. We want to trigger our search whenever we search something in a search field. That makes kind of sense, right? So let's open the app and let's do a bit of, we don't want to do this a bit smaller. Yeah, we can grant this. That should be enough for now, but we don't really need that much space. So here we go. First of all, we should grab our hook and we want to have the search data from use API. Thanks for the import and thanks for pressing the wrong key. Then we're gonna probably have our search term and the type and the results. So let's do this as use state. We got a search term, we got a type, and we got results. And whenever the search term changes, we want to trigger our search. So we can use effect in a pretty good way, actually. There we go. And then whenever our search term changes, we're going to call this to do something. So search. Use effect, please add the add missing function declaration. Oh, sorry about that. Just an F too much. Okay, and now we can add one of the cool Ionic components. So let's add to our Ion content an Ion search bar. So we need to import every single component here from the Ionic React package. Most of this was automatically done. If I just hit say search, we already see that automatically we get this nice little search bar. I'm gonna set the value of the search bar to our search term. And I'm gonna define the on Ion change. So you can usually look up all these things, but all the inputs have something like an on Ion change event. You can find this in the documentation as well if you wanted to. Can we please do another line, because otherwise I'm gonna have some trouble here. So when this changes, we're just gonna call directly set search term e.detail.value, and that means yeah, value should be set all the time. Yes, that means whenever I search something, yes, we see the log here for search. There we go. And also we could just do search term, and that means we do have the data at that point. Cool. Okay, on top of that, there's a cool thing we can directly add here, and that's the debounce time. So Ionic really thought this through. You usually want to have this on a search bar, so you don't always fire off a search or an API call when the user types something, but you want to wait until the user stops typing, and you can do this with debounce. So now you would see a difference. I can type something, and only when I stop, it would trigger our log. And that's perfect. I think that's a good place. On top of that, we also need a way to change our type here, the type like game, movie, or something. So let's use another Ion element. This time we're gonna wrap this in an Ion item. An Ion item is just like a row of things you see already. In a list, you usually have Ion items. I'm gonna put an Ion label on top here and call this select search type. Okay, we got that, and then follow this up with an Ion select. Value will be set to our type, and just like we did before with the on Ion change, this time on Ion change we will call set type with e.detail value. Okay, cool. I feel like we missed a bracket somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Okay, now we got this search here, and it already opens this overview to open the select. That's nice. Again, on iOS, if I would go to the iOS preview, iPhone X, it will look like this right now. And we had a more rounded view here. But we're gonna leave this for now. Now we need some options. So in our case, I'm gonna bring in the options because this is just boring typing. Ion select option, we got a default value for all because that's how the API works. And we got movie, series, and episode, and voila, this now shows up here. Nice. I think this is pretty nice progress already for just working like 20 minutes. Let's call this my movie app, and also give the toolbar a bit nicer color. Let's use the primary color. Primary. It becomes a nice app. Nice touch. Okay. I think we're actually ready to integrate our use effect, right? So let's do this. Let's get rid of this and let's trigger the actual search. So if the search term is equal to an empty string, I'm always pressing window down. Sorry about that. In that case, I want to set my results back to an empty array and return and trigger no other search. However, in the other case, I'm going to create a function load data, async function, and then we can call load data here in our use effect. The result we can now get from our API. So search data based on our search term and the type. Right. And I'm just gonna put out a little log here. Argument of type is not assignable to parameter of search type. Yeah, that's kind of right. Can we fix this? Can we do like search type in here? Okay, yeah, and then we should set search type dot all. Will this make, oh, this makes you happy, nice. Thanks, TypeScript, good point, good point. This was good. If we get a result, we can also call set results to our result. And then we're gonna see how we display this. So let's try. We should be able to do this. So let's search for Lord of the Rings. And boom. There we go. Nice. We get 10 results from the API. This is good because now we just need to display this. Cool. Let's do this. We can do this in our view. Let's do another component, and that is the Ion list. So Ion list is usually used to well, create a list of things. That makes sense, huh? So therefore we can map our items. Results.map. We could have maybe created another TypeScript interface for those items. I was kind of lazy in not doing this. As a little exercise, you could probably do this. We could maybe also do this. It would take us like a minute. But I don't feel like creating it right now. Should we? Come on, don't look at me like that. I know, yeah. Let's quickly do this. Export interface, search result. What does the search result have? It has a poster, a year and a title, no genre, no plot. It has an EMDB ID, and that's pretty much it, right? So 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, there's 5. Poster, title, type. We missed type. Also a string. Well, it's actually it's a search type kind of thing. We can give this to our function, so it does not return promise any. It does return a search result array. You happy with that? Oh, this. More TypeScript, having fun with TypeScript, but no problem. We can do this. Let's just fix it here, and then we got the types right, and then we should have nice code completion in here for things. But this was actually my mistake. So what we need in here is, of course, another pair of rounded brackets. So now the Ion item follows. So this is like the list of items. For every item, let's just put in an Ion label for now to see something on the screen. We're gonna give it item dot. Oh, come on! I made this exercise just to get the type. Okay. Sorry, my bad. Don't use any. Any is always bad. Now we got this. Okay. Let's do Star Wars. Oh, that's not how you spell Star Wars. Oh, interesting. What is this? Results.map is not a function. Movie not found. Okay, I thought we were catching that. We were apparently not catching that. So if result contains a search result, then we're gonna set our results to result.search. No, actually, how do we actually do this? What do we get back from search data? We get now back an array of stuff. Oh, this is getting ugly. Let's see if this could actually also be this is a nice TypeScript exercise for us. What we return is not always a search result. It could also be a search error. I kind of like this search error. I did not anticipate this up front. Really, I didn't. So then we would have a response string and an error string. So it could also be a search error. That's funny. Okay. So now if result.error exists. Hey, you should accept that. It could exist on the result. Like on a search error, we could have an error. We could certainly have this. Result is like a search error, or how do we access the properties now? What can we see? This is or is it, how did I call this, by the way? I called this response or an error. This is interesting. Expected a search error. Yeah, does not exist. I know. Yeah, this is why I'm testing if the result does have an error. Property error does not exist on type search result. Yes, but it does exist on the type search error. Please. I should be allowed to do this. TypeScript. So it might seem like TypeScript is limiting whatever you do. Let's for now I'm just gonna quickly do the ugly way. But usually TypeScript really helps you. I just can't figure out right now why this is such a mess here. Let's try again. A wrong search. Then I get back. Oh, damn. I actually got results. Also, in this case, we need to set our array to this. Interesting. There are actually movies for ASD. Okay. I'm gonna probably fix this in the end. For now, we're just gonna assume any and check if there's an error. We don't want to set our array. We could probably present an error. Would you like to do this? Because there's actually a cool Ionic hook that you could use. Let's add this. That's good. That's good. Good point. Let's add const. Is it? No, it's like this. Const present alert equals use ion alert. And while we're here, let's also add a loading. Const loading dismiss equals use ion loading. So we got both of them. That means once we start our loading, we're gonna call loading. We could actually await this because I think loading should return a promise. Yes, it does. And once we're done with this, we can call await dismiss. And if we encounter an error, we're gonna call present alert. Sorry, no results. Actually, in fact, we got the error message, right? It should be in result.error. Error. Okay. Let's see. Now we just need to find something that for which we don't get a result. Probably this. And we see a loading. And oh, we can't even convert that back to JSON. Anchor and promise. Let's do this again. Come on, I get. Okay, movie not found. Finally, we were able to get this. By the way, I get the problem here because I haven't set a key on this. So let's use item.id, and then we should finally get rid of this error. Once again, let's use Harry, and we get a lot of Harry Potter movies, at least 10 results. Whew, great. If I now spell this wrong, I get movie not found. Great. This is exactly what I wanted to see. So let's build out our little item here a bit with a few other Ionic components. So first of all, we can have an Ion avatar. That's like a little icon. Now we're using a slot. This is interesting. A construct of the shadow components that Ionic is using. So they have defined like an Ion item, and we can do things with the item, and we can inject content into the item. And by using the slots, we can access these different slots on the Ion item. You usually find this in the Ionic documentation. So let's make this a bit bigger. If you go to the Ion item, you're gonna find the definition for the slots. So it has a start, content is placed to the left of the item, a helper, content is placed under the item, error, and blah, blah, blah. And the default slot, if you don't use anything, it's just in the center. So this is what we can use to inject certain kinds of other content and component into our Ionic component. So in the starting slot of the item, I want to put an image. And so therefore, let's use an Ion image source. We could also use a regular image, by the way. Source set to the item.poster. And then let's see. And nice. We get these little avatars rounded in the front. Let's also add a little icon at the end. So we can use an Ion icon. We can put this in the end slot now. And we're gonna use an icon. So to use the Ion icons, you can actually go to the Ionicons library, which is by default included. These are Ionic icons. You can search them, and then you're gonna find how to use them. Now for React, we're not using them like this. For React, we are actually also importing them manually. So let's say for the first one, we're gonna use a video camera. We would put in an import, and now you would like look up the name. You're gonna look up video cam, and then you're gonna find out it's called video cam-outline, but it's video cam outline, I think like this, from Ionicons/icons. And is it not called like that? Video cam outline. Okay, it was called like this. And then we put this to the icon and we close this and we get nice little icons at the end. On a mobile device, we should actually also have a little arrow. Where's the arrow? Oh, the arrow only turns up when I make the item a button, right? Yeah. Then we also got this little arrow which indicates like there's more content and we can click this. We're gonna get into this link and routing in a second. Let's go back to our big overview. In fact, I don't want to have just one icon. I want to have different icons based on the type. So let me replace this line with something else, like this. So then we can add the imports from Ionicons. It's still the same. It's just checking if the type is movie. Then we show the movie, series, or game. So in our case, I think it would still be the same. But let's use Star Wars. Or let's use Lord of the Rings. Is there like a game somewhere? Yeah, here we go. There's a video, we got a TV series, and we also got a game. And we could also show the full text of this if we add a new class name, come on, to our Ion label and name this Ion. Oh, nice. It actually, I didn't know that there's code completion for the class names here. So Ionic has some CSS utilities that you can use. You don't need to know them by now, right? But there's Ion text wrap. And then it would show up like this with the full names. Nice, I really didn't. I'm learning so much today. I already learned about the TypeScript thing, and now I'm learning about that there's code completion for class names in Ionic React. Interesting. If I now change this for, let's say, movie, and do another search, it should actually, did we do a search? I feel like, oh yeah, no, we did a search. And now I only get back movies, yes. I could probably do a search as well when the type changes. Can we do this in one use effect? Let's do this all. Yes, we can, nice. That made the code even better. Nice, I like it. Okay, we have defined them as buttons, so you see this nice little hover effect. So we could also use this on the web. Of course, on the web, it will look kind of ugly right now. So you could probably come up with a bit different UI. We could actually make this responsive with a few attributes, but we're not getting into this. If you want to know more about making like an Ionic React application responsive, please leave a comment. I'm gonna get to it. Now, what we need to do as well at this point is our navigation. So I want to dive into one entry and get really the details. So we're going to add this to the Ion item now. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a router link. And we're going to link to, what do we want to link to? /movies/ and then the item.id. And close this. And yeah, we can keep it like that. So that means at this point, we need another page. So let's do this. I'm gonna add a page and call this like details.tsx. I think I have a snippet for Ionic React, for an Ionic React page component, yes. There we go. So this should be some kind of extension. Ionic snippets. I've installed Ionic snippets, so probably it's included in this extension. Just because I'm very sure you're gonna ask about that. Okay, how do we get to that page? Well, we just include it in our app.tsx, just like we had before. So let's do another route. I'm gonna call this exact as well. Path is now gonna be /movies/ and then a placeholder ID, so we can extract that. And the component will be our details page. Can you just automatically do the import, please? Thank you. By the way, we could also do the same setup here. I kind of like this more. So let's also now use movies here for home. and then the default redirect will go to movies. Okay, so that means we need to reload the app, and then we're on movies. Okay, back to Harry. Can we go to the details page? Yes, we can. And notice that this actually has a little push transition. Notice? This is quite cool. How do we can actually also do the back thing already. So let's call this, I don't know, we're gonna keep it like it is. But in the toolbar of the details page, let's put in Ion buttons. So this defines an area of buttons. We're gonna put this in the starting slot of the toolbar and then define an Ion back button with a default href. And a default href is simply, we're gonna probably remove the default href for a second. Just leave it like this. Let's go to a page. And with that button, we can now go back. But now let's refresh on that page. And then we see we can't go back. So if you're testing out things and you can't go back, but you know actually that this button will always go to the default page to something, you could give it a default href. And by doing this, see, I can now refresh this and I still have the back functionality as if we had pushed that page before. So that's where default href can be used. Okay. Now we need to find a way to access the ID. Like if we had said Harry and went here, we could actually see from the URL bar that we got that ID up there. So in order to extract that, we can use the match of our details page. So we could do match in here and extract the information. However, with TypeScript, what's usually recommended is to have a little interface. So let's add an interface details page props, which extends the React router component props. And then we can call or add this here after React functional component. We can say details page props, and then we have satisfied everyone. And because we're cool, we can now use effect to extract the information, or we can use one of the other Ionic lifecycle events, which is actually pretty cool. There is use Ion view did enter, will leave, and did leave. So we're gonna use Ion will enter. So this is triggered when you enter a page, of course. And here we can grab the ID from match.params, and because we've set up the interface, we can even see the ID in here. And with that ID, we can make our API call. And because we prepared everything, we can now inject get details from our use API hook and call get details right in here. Get details with the ID. Therefore, we need to make this an asynchronous function. And then let's print out the data. That was a lot, but let's see. And we get back the log here for the Harry Potter details and every kind of information that we need. Whew, that was great. Let's add a new state now to keep track of that. So I'm just gonna call this information. Set information with our data. In fact, this is a search. No, what is it called? Not search result, but something search details result. That was the name. Details result. Okay, and because we're doing everything, it's still fine. Cool. So now we just need to set up some information on this page. Because we kind of did most of this before, let me bring in a little code here to our Ion content. I'm actually going to get rid of the padding here, UI goes here, and then I'm gonna just say, if we do have the information, we're gonna create this view, add all missing imports, with an Ion card. An Ion card is another very common pattern, like a card can have a header and a content area. This will actually not work. So for the header, we also have a title and a subtitle. Maybe I'm gonna get rid of the content for now, because then we can put the focus on the title. Argument of null is not assignable to details result. Yes, but okay, let's not talk about this. I know, it was a bit quick and dirty. So this is our card with a little shadow. Again, if we would check it on iOS, I would have a certain other kind of card. So you can always check this on different views. Then we have the content area of that card with an image and a little item for the rating using an Ion icon. And as a result, voila, we got this. And I should now be able to, yeah, thanks. That was too many star. Oh no! Oh, it still works. Star Wars Empire at War. And we got this view. By the way, for the page title, we could also use something like information dot genre, but we should be careful because it might not be set immediately. And then we have changed our title. Nice. It gets better and better. What is this? I haven't seen this. Starfleet, Star Trek. Yeah, we got that as well. Cool. We kind of went through this, but we have actually now built navigation API calls, a list, and a bunch of cool Ionic components that we can use. That's actually pretty cool. I want to show you one more thing because I think this is another of those, wow, this is really included by default. And that is Modal. So a modal is usually presenting some kind of overlay information. However, Ionic recently, I don't know, it's like a year ago, when this comes out, they added a bottom sheet modal. And we can so easily add this to our page that I just have to do it. So let's do this in our Ion content. I will define an Ion modal now. Do we want to? Yeah, I'm going to set a trigger. So you can also trigger this from code, but I will just do this from the HTML here. So I'm going to let's put a footer, another Ion element. So we went really through a bunch of elements today. I'm going to put an Ion button in here. Button. I'm going to say this should expand to the full width. And this has also the ID open modal. And then we're gonna call this show more. Okay, yeah, my face is now covering this, perfect. So let's make this a bit smaller. We see at the bottom, we have this button now. So I'm gonna make this back to full. So now my face is before this, but you should probably see this. If I now click this button, it will it do anything? Well, the Ion modal has no content, so we should probably put in Ion content, class name, Ion padding, and then hello modal. Okay, let's click on it. Goodness. There we go. We can see it, but it's covering the full page. Sometimes you need this, yes. Actually, if you do this on a bigger screen, you're gonna have a smaller modal. That's pretty cool. This is already kind of responsive. However, we want the bottom sheet modal. And to get that, we can define breakpoints here. An array of breakpoints. It starts with 0. Let's do 0, or we can just do 2.5. And I don't know, 0.5 and 0.75. And then what we need as well is an initial breakpoint where this opens. So I'm gonna open this at 0.25. And now watch out for this. Oh no, I'm covering, I completely destroyed the magic. Okay, let's do it again. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. This is the bottom sheet modal in action. And we just get it with very few lines of code. And this was really one of the best additions. I really love this bottom sheet modal. I tried to do this with CSS and HTML and Angular before. It was horrible, but now it's so easy. It's so unbelievable easy. And we could now easily fill this with some kind of random information. Like I'm just gonna put in, instead of hello modal, a few items with icons. Let's add all the missing imports. There's no awards, does not exist. Why you do this to me? There's definitely awards in this. It's a string as well. Anything else missing you want to complain about? No. That's better. So let's save it again, and there we see our information. And now we could pull this up. We see a bit of information, and we can drag this up and get more information about this. And of course, we could style this in a more beautiful way if we wanted to. Again, iOS comes with a tiny bit different representation. It's more rounded. I think the background is turning a bit darker on iOS. But all of this is just possible because we used the breakpoints array and the initial breakpoint. If we hadn't used this, it would be a default modal. On iOS, there's actually also a card modal which stacks this and moves the background, but we're not going to get into this today. What we do want to get into today is actually now building this out to a real application, because so far you have only seen a web preview and you thought like Ionic is used to build mobile applications. Where is mobile, Simon? Yes, I'm going to show you. Bear with me. So let's get back to the project overview. What we need to do now is to integrate Capacitor or Cutover, but I'm not using Cutover anymore really. Capacitor is another project from Ionic that you can actually use with any kind of application. I've shown this before with just React, with just Next.js. You can add this to any kind of web project and wrap your web app into a container and build this into a native application for other platforms. And you get access through the plugins to things like Explore plugins, like the camera, like the file system, geolocation, and these are just a handful of plugins that are bundled with Capacitor, or that they're actually not anymore bundled with Capacitor, they're their own packages. But there are also tons of community plugins on GitHub. That is not the page I wanted to see. I wanted to see this page here on GitHub. So a bunch of other plugins. And finally, you can also use Cutover, which does kind of the same thing. I don't want to talk about this too much today. Capacitor is more like Cutover 2.0, and if you're using Ionic React and you're new to this, please just use Capacitor. If you feel limited, you can in the end still use Cutover plugins. Just keep that in mind. However, what you want to do now is run Ionic cap at iOS. Because we're in an Ionic project, we can do this. If you're in a plain React project, check out my other videos on this, how to install it. You just need to run like npm init and then npx install the Capacitor core and CLI and a few things. However, Ionic now created an iOS project for us, and I'm going to do the same for Android. And then it's going to add the Android project. Cool. I think the iOS project should be built. If it's not the case, I can simply run Ionic cap build iOS. This will first of all trigger a regular build of our web project, and then a simple copy or sync to the iOS folder somewhere like public here. This is pretty much just our own application that is synced to the native application. And it also opens Xcode. So if you never used native tooling, Xcode is used on a Mac to build native iOS or Android applications. It's not used to build Android applications. Sorry, I'm getting a bit ahead. So if you don't have this, make sure you install Xcode. You can actually download it from the App Store. However, you need a Mac for this. So there's no Xcode on Windows. And now I'm just firing up the simulator. I could also select my device if it would be connected, and I would also have to set up some signing. So if you want to build applications for the iOS App Store, you need to be enrolled in the Apple Developer Program, and which is I think $99 per year, and then it can create some kind of certificates. However, here's the application on my device, on my simulator, and it's just the same like before. So I can go ahead with Star Wars. We have a search, we have this. It is a completely native application, and I can do all the things that we did in the browser before as well. I can even do swipe to go back. Everything is a perfectly native application. You can discuss about what means native, but to me, an application that I can install on my device. I could change the icon, of course. I can install through the store and use like this. It is just a native application to me, period. If you want to do the same for Android, you can just run cap open Android, Is my Android device connected? Of course it's not. I definitely trust my own project. Thank you. Oh, goodness. And when I do this, I should be able to, within Android Studio. So, second tool besides Xcode, Android Studio. Why is this so red? This doesn't look good to me. Is it still doing its sync? Oh, I should Ionic build Android. Let's run this in the background. So you should definitely install Android Studio now. This actually works on both Mac and Windows. Within Android Studio, you can then configure the SDK stuff. I think I picked the wrong folder. This looks a lot better. Set up Java, set up the SDKs required for Android. And then at some point you should be able to select your device once the initial sync is done. The build is done. Android is still loading. I don't know. Android Studio is so unbelievable slow. For Android, by the way, you got the same options like I did for iOS. For iOS, it is called a simulator. For Android, it's actually called an emulator for a reason. But you can either create that virtual device, that emulator, or directly deploy it to your connected device, like in my case, this one here. It would be cool if it turns up right now so I could use it. I don't know why this is taking so long. There it is. Isn't this the project? Why can't I run it? Can you just do a sync, please? Did you do a sync? I don't know. But I should probably have the previous project installed. So in that case, I could just show you that one, and you would have to trust me that this is actually... Yeah, I do have a movies app here. Let's see if I can call this to you. And then I want to show you one more thing that's actually going to be really, really interesting. Because right now the flow would be kind of horrible to build the app with a command, then go through Xcode or Android Studio and deploy it to your device. This is really horrible and an awful developer experience. So there is something called live reload on a device, and I'm going to show this to you in a second. Anyway, here is the application on my Android device. You see different styling. I'm going to put in Star Wars here as well. We got the same stuff. I actually see the icons here. Again, if I do this side by side now, we see the difference of the adaptive styling. We see it in the header, we see it in the search input, we see it in the item, and also in this view. And I could now go into this and again do the same thing just like we did, and everything from just one code base. Now, last thing I wanted to show you is the live reload. And that is really, really interesting and really, really easy. So let's go back to our project and run this simple command. Ionic cap run iOS -- live reload -- external. This will ask for a device. This is the iPhone 14 Pro simulator. Again, could be also be my own device. Yes, please use this IP. You can actually specify, once you've got this figured out, you can use the IP, and you can also use the ID of your simulator or device in that call, and then you have just this one call. However, this can sometimes take a bit. I hope it's doing, yes, it's doing the redeployment. Nice. And now see what's going on. We go to the home page. This is madness. And there we go. So you know this from every framework: React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, Next. You know this from Flutter, you know this from React Native, and of course Ionic has this as well. It is just that native developers, native Swift and Android developers, I think they dream about stuff like this where you got live reload on a device. I think it's still not yet a reality. So with just one command, we were able to do this. Our application is now simply booting from localhost, so I could use my local application here once again. And the application on my device or simulator is simply served from this IP here and loading the resources from there. And since we got live reload here, we got live reload everywhere. So live change in here and live change in here. And the funny thing is I could actually run this command now for Android as well. And then you would have live reload on all the platforms, which is usually really fascinating to me and helps you to develop your application as fast as possible. You can see the adaptive styling on the different platforms side by sides. And from there, well, the sky's the limit. Alright, and that's it for our Ionic React beginner's guide. We've been using, I think, Ionic 6 with React. If you got any questions, please let me know below the video. And if you now feel like, well, this Ionic thing is actually pretty cool, I want to learn more about it, check out also the Ionic Academy, which is my online school, which is focused 100% on Ionic. We have, next to a lot of Angular content, now also React content, so go check it out if you are serious about building applications with Ionic React. Make sure you also hit the subscribe button for all the upcoming videos, and then I hope you will have a great week with some awesome code. And until then, happy coding, Simon.